and I'm on vacation in Missouri on a lake, on a boat, having a good time, and I got the results of my screen, which indicated that I may have pancreatic cancer and or gallbladder cancer. And that's where the shock and disbelief kind of came in, because there's no cancer in my family. My name is Darla. I'm from Oregon. I was diagnosed with adenocarcinoma of the pancreas in 2024. I had had some back pains in 2023 that were basically diagnosed as basically age-related and work-related, working too hard, lifting too much, and then had physical therapy for that and never resolved the issue. And then in about January of 24, I had a little bit of a stomach pain around the area of my stomach, but I went in for that and it was kind of diagnosed as indigestion, and I started Prilosec. Never really totally resolved that, but it wasn't a huge issue and it wasn't like a big pain. It felt more like a knot in my stomach that was unusual. And other than that, I had no symptoms at all. I have life insurance through Mass Mutual Life Insurance Company, and they sent out a newsletter with an email that offered a free cancer screening test. And I thought I had deleted it because I don't usually participate in that type of activity. So a couple days later, that email came back up, and I thought, well, that's weird. And I just read through it again, and it was free, offered through the life insurance company. And I thought, well, if it's easy, I'll do it. And if it's not easy, I won't. And it was very easy to go through the process, and it required a blood test. And I thought, well, why not? I don't have any cancer in my family. Why shouldn't I? It's free, you know? So that'll rule everything out. That was in June of 24. And then fast forward to September of 24, and I didn't really think about it. And I'm on vacation in Missouri on a lake, on a boat, having a good time. And I got the results of my screen, which indicated that I may have pancreatic cancer and or gallbladder cancer. And that's where the shock and disbelief kind of came in, because there's no cancer in my family. Immediately the day after, I came back from Missouri and went to my family practitioner, and she kind of basically had said that these types of tests don't really hold water, and I really shouldn't be worried about it. And I reminded her of my earlier issue with my stomach, kind of feeling that weird knot. And I thought, that isn't that around my pancreas? And she said, well, yeah, but these tests, they can be false positives and on and on. And I kind of really pushed her to look into it further. And at that point, she said, okay, we'll do a blood test for my lipase levels, which comes from your pancreas, which she did, and that was elevated. And that kind of got her attention. And at that point, she said, okay, because of the elevated lipase levels, let's do an MRI. And then we scheduled the MRI, and that was within a week or two. Went in for the MRI, and then I got the results from the MRI about a week later, and that's where they showed that there was in fact a tumor in my pancreas, and possibly something having to do with my lymph node near my pancreas. At that point, I went in and scheduled for laparoscopy, and they did that. They biopsied the tumor, and that's where it was diagnosed as adenocarcinoma. And then there was something suspicious with the lymph node next to it. I really didn't know much about cancer. I mean, cancer to me was one word, cancer, like a blanket. I did not know at that time, and I've learned an awful lot since then, that there are all kinds of cancers, all kinds of mutations, all kinds of treatments. And I started researching a lot online with groups of people who have pancreatic cancer, and communicating with them on their treatments and what they've gone through. I think my fear led me into research more than anything, but I just wanted to get in and find out what the oncologist had to say. And that's what I did. my tumor was not huge. It's less than 2 centimeters. So it wasn't a huge tumor, and it was in the neck of the pancreas, not the tail and not the head, which seems to be pretty common. And so when I went and met with the oncologist and the surgeon, the plan for the oncologist was start with FOLFIRINOX, let's get you going on that, and let's try to shrink that tumor. And at that time, they had not really delved into what the tumor consisted of mutation wise. So I started on the chemo, and the first round wasn't too bad. Had some side effects, felt shaky. They put you on steroids with that, and the steroids I think kind of affected me. And then by round two, I turned bright red and kind of started swelling up and having some neuropathy in my feet and my hands. Kind of scrambled my brains a bit. My concentration was off. Very tired. And then round three, amazingly, seemed to be better. I thought, oh, I'm doing better now. I'm getting the hang of this. Then on round four, it was really bad. I had had some really bad side effects. I never lost my hair, which they told me they thought I would, but I didn't. But I started having really bad neuropathy, really bad digestive problems, even visual problems and neuropathy in my face, just stuff like that, sleeping a lot. And then I went through round five, and I was thinking I don't want to have any more chemo at round five. And then I spoke to the surgeon, and they had done another CAT scan and said, well, this chemo is not affecting your tumor. It's not shrinking. So why don't we go ahead and just remove the tumor? Well, at that time, the oncologist came back and said, no, we got to do more chemo, and at least another round. Well, I compromised with him, and we did one more round of chemo, but we lessened some of what was in the FOLFIRINOX, so I didn't have such harsh side effects. And I got through that, and then I had surgery, what's called RAMPS surgery. It's like the Whipple, only kind of modified. And I had that on March 6th. They removed the tumor and 31 lymph nodes. They found that there was cancer cells in one lymph node closest to the tumor. I got clear margins from the surgery, meaning they got everything around it. They also removed my spleen and my gallbladder, and part of my pancreas, of course. After that, my recovery was in the hospital for a little more than a week. And I seemed to be doing really good. So they let me go home because I was up and walking. I'm a very motivated person, so I don't lay around much at all or sit around much. So I was up walking the unit and doing everything they told me to. So they let me go home. And then 2 weeks after I was released, I had an incident where I had excruciating pain through my body, and an ambulance was called. I had a pocket of fluid that had become infected because of the surgery around the surgery site, around my pancreas, and that was infected. And I also had a severe bowel obstruction. So that put me back in the hospital for a week. And so I got immediate antibiotics, and then they had to clear the obstruction, which was not surgically done. And after that, I came home and started over. And as of today, I'm doing pretty well. I started physical therapy, and things are going pretty good. I think the worst challenge for me would be looking to the future, seeing anything for the future, having any kind of plan. It's almost like everything stops because you can't plan anything. You can't look forward to anything. So I felt kind of like I got off of the plane and just got stuck in the airport. You know what I mean? I felt like the world kind of stopped. It wasn't going forward. And it has. It's been kind of in limbo now. We've had plans, and I've been afraid to do any plans. I haven't been back. I did work during chemo, which was a challenge in itself, but now I'm going to go back to work, and I still wonder, am I going to be able to do my job? So that's a challenge. Anything going forward, I feel kind of like I'm stuck in limbo with this disease. I had a ctDNA test and another DNA test that was supposed to help to determine what type of treatment going forward I would have. They learned that the FOLFIRINOX that I had had was not effective on the type of mutation I have in my cancer. So the oncologist had suggested let's try Gem-Abrax, which is a different type of chemo. I found out through my own research that that also has no effect on the type of genetic mutation that I have. So my question for my oncologist that when I see him next, which will be the beginning of June, is okay. If these don't work for chemotherapy, then what are my options? As of now, my DNA test, my ctDNA test says that there is zero. It's all negative. There's no markers in my blood saying that there's any cancer. I've had a body CT scan. There's nothing in there. My CA919 says that it's normal. So there's no indications that there's cancer anywhere, anything left. That gives me kind of a scary false sense of hope, you know? Thinking, oh, great, I'm in the clear, because I'm scared to death that I'm not, because it's such a sketchy, stealthy type of disease, you know, especially with pancreatic cancer. It's, you know, you get your hopes up and then boom, it's back. And I see that over and over again in the groups that I'm in. So I don't want to falsely have hope, but I do want to try to get going forward. So I go back to work June 1st, and then hopefully I'll get strong enough to be able to do my regular job. There's all different kinds of variations of gene mutations, and mine is a RET fusion mutation. And there was a couple of other types of mutations in there, but the RET fusion particularly was what they kept mentioning over and over that I had in mind, which isn't usually found in the pancreas, apparently. That's why it was unusual to the doctors. And because they hadn't had a lot of opportunity to treat somebody with that type of mutation in their pancreas, it was a little experimental, I think, on their part too. And that is probably why he just tried with the FOLFIRINOX, hoping that it would do something, but it didn't. And I think that's why he's trying to go for the Gem-Abrax, which honestly, if he can't show me that it has had positive outcomes, I'm not going to do it. And everybody has that choice for themselves. If I'm in the clear and my body shows clear right now, I don't see why I should subject it to things that are going to give me more side effects than benefit if there's no known benefit. I'm a Christian. I have been a Christian for a long time, but my overwhelming desire to draw closer to God, to find my spirituality, to be led and to find strength through that, is was to me the biggest surprise because I did not I needed it and there wasn't anything on this earth that was going to give it to me. You know, I couldn't find the strength. My family couldn't give me the strength. I didn't feel like I had the strength, particularly after or while going through chemotherapy. I didn't feel like I had that physical strength or the mental strength. And so I had to get that from somewhere, and I got that from God. So that was, to me, the biggest surprise, and that's been the most satisfying part of the journey. Is really how close I've been able to draw close to God and share that with other people that are going through the same thing that don't have hope and don't know where to draw from. I think people are complacent. Just like myself prior to this whole experience, I thought to myself, I have no cancer in my family. What have I got to worry about? Cancer is hitting everybody at every age. And so you can't think, oh, well, I don't do that, or I don't smoke, or I don't drink, which I don't do. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I live a healthy life, I work hard. Why should I worry about cancer, right? And that has nothing to do with anything. You can get it despite anything you think you're doing right. I think that if I had a soapbox to stand on, it would be get tested and let's get some precursor type testing FDA approved, like the one that I took, which was not FDA approved and still is not FDA approved. It needs to be approved. These tests need to be something that's incorporated into a regular physical, just like a mammogram or a colonoscopy. It needs to be regular. It's amazing to me how prolific this disease is. And it just seems to me unusual that, well, you sure don't hear much about it. You don't hear much about pancreatic cancer on TV. You know, you hear about breast cancer or you hear about colon cancer, but you don't hear about pancreatic cancer. And it is out there. There's a lot of it. And so many people are suffering. Like breast cancer used to not really be seen a long time ago. And then it was brought to the forefront. And because of that, there's been great progress made. And now there's mammograms and people are surviving breast cancer. That needs to be done with pancreatic cancer too. So there is hope out there. It's just that people have to know that they have to advocate for themselves and they have to be proactive.